Hello, and welcome to this episode of our Husky Huddle Up podcast. I'm really excited to be with you today for this episode. I feel like I always need to comment on the weather, and it is a hot day here in Seattle. It's still very beautiful, but it is a very warm day. But my name is Emily Colby. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of First Year Curriculum and Engagement in first year programs. And as always, excited to be joined by co-host Zack Fairchild. Hi, Zack.
Hi, Emily. How are you on this balmy morning here in Seattle?
Staying cool and hydrated. Have the water. We're working through it. How are
Yeah,
you doing?
I'm good. This is heat wave week, y'all. If you're not familiar with what's going on up in Seattle, we're in the 80s, sometimes low 90s, and it's like a wall of heat out there. So stay hydrated, get some AC, whatever you can do to stay cool and take care of yourself this week. That's what we're all focused on over here, Emily. My dogs are panting, but we're doing okay. Luckily, we have AC. Um, but I'm super excited to be here today. Specifically, as you all know, we recently talked with Dawn over at our U District partnership, and now we are talking with Sally Clark, Vice President, Division of Campus and Community Safety here at UW. Um, and this is going to be a great kind of piggyback off of that episode if you were able to listen in. If you haven't listened into that episode, I would recommend listening to that episode and following up with this episode because you are going to get some great information from both of these episodes around campus and community safety on campus and also in our U District. So welcome, Sally. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. It's good to talk with you both. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you. And I love, Zach, thank you so much for mentioning the tie-in with some of our previous episodes. And if folks don't have anything to write with in front of you or a place to take notes, I would totally encourage you to pause right now, grab something, because I'm really excited about the number of resources that I know Sally's going to mention to us. But before we dive into all that, I'm really excited to just get to know you a little bit more, Sally. Can you share with us a little bit about your story, what brings you to the University of Washington?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. I am a three-time Husky is one of the things I often talk about when I'm talking with students and parents in the UW proper community. So I came to the University of Washington as an undergrad and then also did my Master's of Public Administration at the Evans School of Public Affairs, an awesome place. I come from Portland originally. So I'm a Pacific Northwest person. I'll note I use she, her pronouns. I've lived here in the Seattle area, gosh, I guess since the mid-'80s then, really. Off and on. I mean, I've had a couple of sojourns, a couple of other places, but I majored in political science and Spanish here, but I'll be honest, I spent most of my time at the University of Washington daily. I started out as a print journalist, actually, before losing my way and leaving print journalism.
Losing your way or finding your way, Sally.
I know, right? Hey, I was gonna mention one thing, and a few of us have been talking about this, and with a podcast, I normally wouldn't do this because I know that you want them to sort of be evergreen. But these podcasts are actually intended to be happening during this time period for students and parents and their families. And their friends. And I just wanted to note, there are a lot of us who are thinking about students and their families who may be coming from Hawaii or may have family in Hawaii. And that's such a crushing experience, particularly for those students and families. So I know there's a lot of folks thinking about how to bring those students and families to campus in the right way. And so, really looking at that, and a lot of folks are thinking about that. And I know that's heavy on a lot of people's hearts right now.
Thank you so much for acknowledging. I know we always sort of start these episodes with banter about the weather and where we are in setting context, and I really, really appreciate your setting that context, and that we can continue to go back to this episode and keeping those families and students on our minds and continuing to support. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity to think about it a little bit more and figure out how we work together to support those folks, how we try to figure out across the country how we prevent those kinds of disasters from happening. And I'll just note that as a part of the work of the Division of Campus Community Safety, emergency management is housed within our division, and we think really, really deeply about not just the Seattle campus, but across the UW's 3 campuses and in other locations about what it means to be prepared, both personally and also as a community, for when something happens, because something will happen. And I always hate saying that to parent groups. Something will happen. But everybody knows that in your neighborhoods. You know that where you go to work. You know that where you go shopping. And something will happen, and we're all called upon to figure out what our role is for prep and for response.
That's a great point. And I think just acknowledging that something will happen is the first step in being prepared that something will happen. And that's just kind of the reality of living in an urban environment, living in today's world, in any of the states across the country right now. So I appreciate you acknowledging that in kind of that candid way.
I should also be really careful. Like, I'm not trying to take it to a totally big place. Like for some of the folks listening who are coming to UW, the thing that will happen will be that you lock yourself out of your house, or you lose your Husky card. These are like the minor, like I hesitate to even use the word crisis, but if you're at a stressed moment and you're in finals week and you lose your Husky card, you know what? We're going to figure it out. There are resources for that. Your Husky card gets replaced. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. So anyway, trying to bring us up there a little bit. Sorry about that.
No, and I just think about all the stories that you must have over in your time. And I won't ask you to repeat all.
We could do a whole another
too.
series of podcasts on that.
No, that's an important message that we thread through our family orientation sessions and students A&O sessions, is that, you know, mistakes are going to happen. Things are going to go as planned, you know, so being prepared for that and knowing what your resources are, how to reach out to those resources, how to utilize those things. Frankly, just being aware of all those things is really what this is intended for. So I think that's very valid to bring up. And I think we're going to get more into those resources throughout the podcast. But I did want to ask just a little bit more about what your role on campus is.
So my role, and that's a great sort of pivot as we talk about the range of resources that are available for students during their experience at the university. My role, again, my title is Vice President for Campus Community Safety. That's a relatively new position, and it's a relatively new division. So the UW has so many great resources for students across the board, and the university is also, all the campuses are sort of these mini cities and towns that have a life over the course of 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And we have safety resources that we've really come to think more critically about over the past several years. COVID was part of that. The murder of George Floyd was part of that. In Seattle, it's not unknown that there's a pretty significant unsheltered population, some of whom are really struggling and are not being successful in different systems that are meant to help them. And as we look at our environment, as we look at how organizations are put together, colleges and universities are these huge models of diversified responsibilities. And that's great. Like, that's grown up over hundreds of years, right? You've got faculty senate, and you have student government, and athletics is over here, and medicine is down here. And some of that works great. But President Kelsey did look around after the past several years and started thinking, I wonder if safety isn't one of those things that should be completely diversified and spread out through the organization for a variety of reasons. And so her charge to me a couple of years ago was to look at what we could be doing differently, what we could be doing more effectively to both amplify and support the way we do safety now, but to also engage and to start that longer term rethinking about how should a university organize itself and how should it think about and rethink some of the assumptions that institutions across the board have made about what makes people feel safe and what makes people feel perhaps not so safe and not so served by that big institution. So in the fall of 2022, we launched this new division, and the new division was meant to really focus the work of safety preparedness and response, to improve collaboration, have someone and a team that's responsible for collaborating across these different pieces of the UW enterprise, and to be really a clearer point of communication for students, staff, and faculty to understand what's available, how does it work, and where do you go if something isn't working for you. And so the Division of Campus Community Safety was born. It also recognizes that we are a pretty wide community with a lot of different folks with different needs. And again, some folks who have, particularly students of color, who may come and likely come with having been failed by certain institutions, including police in the past. In the Division of Campus Community Safety, we have the UW Emergency Management Crew. We have Safe Campus, which is a great resource for students who are looking for assistance for safety planning, or they're feeling unsure about something involving themselves and another student, and they need to sound it out. And for a few students this year, they will need to contact Safe Campus, and they should contact them and ask for assistance. And then University of Washington Police Department is specific to the Seattle campus, and that's a formal accredited police department with a chief and officers, and they work the campus 24/7 with, in addition to officers, which are sort of the thing that people usually think about with police departments. We also have what are called campus safety responders, who are the unarmed folks who work in different parts of the campus and are the eyes and the ears, and they can be also intervening and getting involved if students have an issue or have a question about something. And then we have unarmed security guards who are assigned to different parts of the campus during different parts of the day and night in order to be, again, present, walking around, maybe driving around, checking doors, checking hallways, checking parking garages. I want to note before we get to the end of this podcast that there are a couple of resources that students should definitely know about, especially as we go into the fall and the winter, and perhaps at some point we can come back to Night Walk, which is a resource that's operated under the University of Washington Police Department for escorted rides to and from campus within a certain boundary around the Seattle campus. So those are the technical parts of the new division, and we're engaged in a lot of different projects that are looking at how we improve the quality of service among all of those great teams, which already do an amazing job. We improve the connections that we have with the other resources around campus, and that we fully engage in rethinking some of the things that institutions have assumed work in the past. And that, to some degree, has to do with alternative interventions, interventions that are not necessarily what we think of in terms of what armed police have been asked to do in the past. And so we're continuing to work through who responds to a particular kind of call and what makes them most effective doing that.
Thank you so much for all that information. I feel like I'm jotting
down. Yeah, that's way long. Not good for a podcast. I need to be shorter. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. And I find myself sort of sitting back and taking it because, okay, I'll ask the first just curiosity question that I have, and then I'll go into more of the technicalities too. But as I was listening, and I keep going back to that you were a student here, and now in this role, this is a newer division. What is your typical day like? What is on your calendar? Who are you all?
Well, today I'm doing a podcast with some folks who give me entry, and I'm very grateful for a little bit of time where students and families will actually get to hear about this. So thank you for that. It's a mix. So I do a lot of meeting with those 3 units about how to help them be successful. Like I'm not a public safety professional. I didn't come out of policing. I don't come out of the military. I'm not a formally trained emergency management responder or leader. I do come out of a background that is a mix of nonprofit and government roles. My most recent government role before coming to the University of Washington was as a Seattle City Council member. And in that role, I did have deep involvement with public safety policy, strategy, budgeting, questions about staffing, questions about responses, and also as the council president, a fair amount of involvement with emergency preparedness and thinking about how a city prepares and responds to crises, which are never exactly what you think they're going to be, and they're never exactly what the training exercise was about that you were a part of 6 months ago, even though you thought that training exercise was awesome. And we had that experience. So a typical day is Zooming with a few folks, talking about how do we do recruitment for staff positions and student positions in Safe Campus. How do we figure out what an emergency operations center looks like post-COVID in 2023 and going forward? But this past Monday, we were talking about the heat event. This past Monday was pretty much eaten by responding to power supply problems, because Seattle City Light had some issues outside of the Seattle campus that required them to choke down power to the Seattle campus. That causes us all sorts of questions about, can we meet the load demand and how do we decrease our load demand? Which on Monday, a very hot day, I believe high 80s, if not 90, we had to cut off cooling to campus for several hours. That involved activating different teams that work behind the scenes on behalf of students, staff, and faculty. A few of those, crisis communications is a skilled team of professionals in the university who think about how to quickly utilize the UW alert system. And this is my opportunity to push the UW alert system. Students, if you have not already made sure that you're signed up for text alerts, please do that now. And parents, guess what? Your student can sign you up via your email address. You can get UW alerts too. This is the system that we use to alert folks. We don't use it as a news service, so I want to be careful and not raise expectations. Like, this is not something that we use to just get information out to campus regularly. This is used when there's an action happening, some kind of disturbance is happening, and we need you student, the listener right now, to take a particular step. It might be avoid a particular area. It might be stay where you are. It might be, please be aware that something's happening off campus at a particular address. We want your student and you students listening to really recognize that when we send an alert, it's because we need to. It's not going to be something that we want to do regularly, because we want you to recognize that it is serious and that we do want you to pay attention to it. It only has a certain number of characters. There's always a link to the blog. The blog has the details you're looking for about what exactly is happening. So that's a long way of saying that on Monday we activated crisis communications. We also activated the university's weather status advisory group. That's the group that meets when there are weather interruption possibilities, and in this case, high heat and potential smoke from wildfires in Central Washington, the Sourdough Fire. And in the winter, it meets if there's the possibility of snow or ice, because if you're coming from outside of Seattle, folks, we're not good at it. We're just not good at snow and ice. We panic quickly. Our hills, our transit agencies aren't made for it. So snow and ice, we tend to buckle down for a day or two, and then after 3 days, people start to get pretty antsy about it. And then we also activated our virtual emergency operations center, and that's for the crew of people across the university who need to share information in real time on a virtual platform about how a particular incident might be affecting their operations and how they can collaborate across the university to mitigate those impacts and to come out of that particular issue, that particular crisis, which on Monday was choking down power from Seattle City Light and us having to figure out how to meet the new power load that they were going to give us and cutting off cooling to buildings for a certain number of hours. Another long answer, so sorry.
No, you're fine. This is great.
No, I'm really great. And again, I'm listening and nodding and making all sorts of faces, because having this conversation and now having the context behind the email Monday and having this deeper appreciation too for
because both of you would have gotten the advisories, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
I hope. If you're nodding.
Well, and I was actually just texting my husband, because my husband we moved from Oregon a little over a year ago, and he works for the utility company down there, and he was telling me, eWeb, shout out to eWeb, that they were having to toggle power and notifying folks that they needed to use less power, and potentially we're going to see some increased cost if they weren't able to toggle their power. And that was on the same day. So yeah, there's just stuff going on, but it's important to be aware of those things. So I also want to come back and I really appreciate the distinction you made about what the UW alert system is for and when those alerts are appropriate to go out, because we do often get questions or comments or concerns. My husky said this happened, or I read this happened, or I saw on Reddit. We'll bring up Reddit again. This is like every episode now. That this happened, but that's a very real thing. Why didn't this go out as an alert? And I think knowing kind of how that's broken down and how you categorize what a UW alert really is, and that it's, one of those actionable, you need to do something, move away from a place, I think is important to know. So it's not the news source. Um, I appreciate knowing that also as a newer person on campus, um, as well as all of our new parents and families coming in, hoping to kind of set that expectation of that's when you really do need to pay attention, is if you do see a UW alert, because that is something they've taken that extra process going through those steps to make sure it's appropriate to go out and UW alerts versus just blasting everything. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, and I guess the thing I would add, and I want to be careful to not set Chief Wilson up to receive 7,000 emails all at once, but I was actually really impressed last year, and that was my first year working with Chief Craig Wilson, who's the head of the University of Washington Police Department for the Seattle campus. Craig has so many conversations with parents during the course of the year that are often really just inquiries. Like, tell me what you all do. Like, how do you all operate? Are you all 24/7? And sometimes it'll be a call from a parent saying, hey, my student told me about something that happened at 17th and 50th, and I'm really concerned about it. I should also identify, for parents who don't already know and students who don't already know, the University of Washington Police Department patrols the Seattle campus proper and is the responsive party for the UW's few buildings in the university district that are off campus. So if you think of the large tower that's in the U district with the W on it, UWPD would be the primary responder for something that happened on that property. North of campus, north of 45th, where I know a lot of students will be living, that is technically the Seattle Police Department's response area. We have an agreement with them so that at night we do have 1 to 2 officers who are up there, and they are checking on the registered parties, checking that those parties are following the rules, that they're not serving what they're not supposed to be serving, that we don't have underage people in there. But we try to maintain and we do and have had a good relationship with Seattle Police Department's North Precinct, so that there's good communication between Seattle Police Department and UWPD, and I think that's improved over the past year as well. There are a lot of students who are going to live north of 45th. They are important to us, and sometimes there's confusion about whether UWPD is actually the primary responder. They're not, but we do back up and we do collaborate with Seattle Police Department.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like you read my mind, because as you were talking about all of the things that encompasses campus and community safety, thinking about that relationship with the UW Police Department and recognizing, the summer during family orientation, it's been so wonderful to have Lieutenant Schultz and Acting Lieutenant Stewart every Thursday come and talk with families and answer questions and talk about just a variety of safety concerns, crime rates, and other questions that come up. And so really appreciating you're talking about, the differentiation, but also that partnership and how important that is too.
And they're great. They're absolutely great. I'm so happy that they have been able to be a part of those conversations, because they're both terrific examples of UWPD's leadership.
Here's our big shout out to UWPD. And as you were talking, thinking about kind of that segue into, okay, if I'm a student or a family member, someone visiting, and I'm, out in the U district or, north of 45th or somewhere at night and it's dark, what are some recommendations that you have? And I will say, this is one of the top questions too that folks ask students, or folks ask, how safe is it? What are some recommendations?
Yeah,
how would you answer that question?
Yeah, and I wish I had a chance to listen to how Don answered that question in the conversation you had with Don Blakeney from the U District Partnership. U District Partnership is such a great organization in terms of the U District's sense of safety and actual safety, and all of the great improvements that have been made there over the past few years. What I would say from my seat is that the U District is an amazing neighborhood. I'm not going to say that there aren't some challenges there, but it's an amazing neighborhood. To be able to still go see a movie at the Varsity Theater, to be able to go see an awesome show at the Neptune, and I'm trying to remember what most recent awesome. I really haven't been to a concert for a while post-COVID, I will be honest. I think Wilco was No, it was Yola Tango. Yola Tango I saw at the Neptune, which was an awesome show. Going up, on the weekends, going up to the U District Farmers Market in the mornings is great for anybody. That everybody should be doing that. Catching breakfast, going and getting bubble tea, hanging out on the Ave is still a great activity. And to your point, there are always going to be moments, whether it's in the daytime or whether it's in the evening, where we really want students to think and to be super aware. And again, I don't care if it's 7 a.m., 7 p.m., or 2 a.m. We really want students to be aware of where they are and have that personal awareness and that personal preparedness of, okay, you are walking through an urban neighborhood. I don't know if I could convince people to take the ear pods completely out. Can you take out one ear pod? I'd be happy with that. Take out an ear pod, put it in your pocket. We lose them at my house all the time and end up with these random single spares around. Please do that. Please don't be staring down at your phone. Like, keep track of where you are and put the phone in your pocket for a while if you can. Keep track of where you are. What does it mean to be crossing the street? Who's around you? Who's near you? What's happening at that bus stop? And I would say that about any neighborhood. That is not just that's wherever you're living now, in addition to the U District. And at night, it's even more important. I know that not everybody has the opportunity to walk with friends at night, but if you do, that's a great idea. I will say that's something I was told in the mid 80s, and it holds true now, if you can. And if you can't, that's a reality. Like, if you're going back and forth from the light rail station and you're on your own, please be aware of where you are. If your gut instinct is to cross the street because there's a group ahead of you or an individual ahead of you that just doesn't strike you as right, cross the street. Don't feel like you have to power through, and don't feel like you have to go someplace you don't feel is right, again, with the gut instinct. 911 is always a fine call for you. I know that, again, we are going to have some students who don't feel comfortable calling 911 for a police response. 911 in Seattle is really the response right now. Seattle's making some changes in the future, but that could also be a fire response. If you see someone who's clearly in distress, they're going to dispatch Seattle Fire, and you don't have to feel like you've dispatched police on somebody if that's a concern for you. I mentioned night walk a moment ago, and so let's talk about someone who is studying late at night, because I know every student who's listening right now is going to study late at night. They're going to be great. They're going to have their noses to the grindstone. They're going to be good about it and healthy about it. And when it's time for the libraries to close, they need to get to, I'm going to make this up, an apartment that's at, 47th and 8th. Let's call it that. They might feel fine walking there. They might have buddies, and they might feel great walking there on their own. They might feel great walking there with buddies. They may not. That person can call Nightwalk, and they can find that number easily on the UWPD webpage. And that Nightwalk call goes through to the UWPD dispatch, which works 24/7, trained professional dispatchers like any 911 call center. And they send a security guard. They send an unarmed security guard in a marked vehicle to pick you up and to take you to that place that you reside. It's about going from campus to where you live, or from where you live to campus at night. And there's a map on that Nightwalk webpage that shows you the territory of where Nightwalk works. That service comes on, I'm going to say, around 6:30 at night in the winter, and operates until about 2 a.m. when the libraries are closed. I'm going to be really clear. We had some folks who were not great users of it last year. This is not a service to take you from your apartment to go down to U Village and go shopping. It is not a service. There are limitations. It is not a service to take you from your shared house north of 45th to go to Schulte's to get a burger. It is a purposeful, meant to get you from someplace where you've been studying or working on campus. If you're working on campus, same thing. You might have a job at the libraries, or you might have a job at the hub. That's what that service is for. It was super popular last year. Again, some listeners are going to know we had some issues with violence on the Ave at the beginning of last academic year, and we had a lot of people learning about Nightwalk and using it. We do sometimes, if there's a surge in users, and if we can't meet your call for service in a certain amount of time, we're going to dispatch a Lyft driver People can decline that. They can say, I'm not comfortable with a Lyft driver, I won't know who it is, all that. That's fine. But it does mean that you would have to wait longer for the security guard to actually come pick you up. We want to make sure you don't have too much time that you're sitting waiting for somebody to come get you.
What was the website again where people can find the?
Yeah, so this will be just the general website for the police department at the Seattle campus, which is the whole HTTPS, :// It's police.uw.edu. Police.uw.edu. And that'll take you to all the resources because they have a bunch of crime prevention tip resources on there. They also, I know this is going to sound weird, but if you are bringing a bicycle to campus, please register it with us. Please register the serial number with us. If you are bringing a laptop, you may also register that. Things do walk away even though you don't intend them to. Please think about registering those because it's going to make it a little bit easier later if you are wanting to make an insurance claim. It also makes it easier for us to find stuff. We do find stuff. We do come across bikes and laptops places, and we can match up the serial number and say, hey, we found this. We got this back for you.
And the missing earbuds that if you're taking one out, then
that one's tougher.
Okay.
That one's
so
tougher.
We can't push it. Okay.
We find those having been run over by cars, unfortunately, on the by the gutter.
I have seen some remnants of what appeared to be a bike or a scooter scattered about. That's only one time, but I come from Eugene, Oregon, and our campus, University of Oregon, not putting them on blast, but we were one of the top in the nation for bike theft because our campus was very accessible and it was very easy to access with bikes, and so a lot of folks use bikes, and there was like a whole bike market.
We end up with a really similar thing, and it's sad. We do encourage people to use the U-locks. Using a standard chain or a standard cable lock is much less effective. And in order to get those U-locks off, somebody has to actually set up with a grinder or a power saw that sends off some sparks. That tends to attract more attention. So I had different bikes all the way through my undergraduate career. I was lucky; I never had one stolen, and I do bike from time to time to campus, not on super hot days, and I do use a U-lock. So strongly recommend those.
And we do have those bike lockers in houses around campus as well.
Yeah,
so those are super great. They're super secure.
Yeah, the new bike cages.
Yeah, they're really secure.
Oh my God, those are great.
So if your Husky's thinking about biking, there's a map on the website. If you just look for, you can use the UW website like a Google search. Just go in the search bar and search for UW bike lockers, and it should be the first link that pops up, and it will give a map showing for you and your Husky where all those are. But if you're gonna bike, I would take advantage of those for sure. Thank you, Sally.
Can I do an unprompted pitch back to Safe Campus? I feel like I haven't done a great job of kind of saying what they're for. Safe Campus is this incredibly gifted group of I'll call them case managers. I know that they have a different title than that, but that's probably most descriptive for students and parents listening, students and families listening. And the Safe Campus folks are a phone call away, primarily during the day. There are other resources for students overnight, but primarily during the working day, let's call it. And at some point during the course of the year, you students might feel like you are getting some unwanted attention from somebody. You might feel like you yourself are having some challenges, some difficulties. And it depends on the circumstances, but the counseling center is always a great resource. Like, I can't say enough about the folks who work in the UW counseling centers at all the campuses. These are incredible, incredible people. If you have concerns, though, about yourself, you have concerns again about you're getting some attention or some vibes that are weird from somebody in your orbit, Safe Campus is a great call. Safe Campus is going to talk through with you, okay, what are you experiencing? Tell me more about that. Tell me just what you're thinking about. That call to Safe Campus can be anonymous. And they are trained professionals in what I'll also call threat assessment and violence prevention. And that may not be exactly how, they're not going to throw a bunch of technical terms at you. They're going to be talking with you about what's your experience. Like, what are you feeling? Why are you feeling it? Why do you think you're feeling it? And what can we do to help you take the next steps that help you feel safe, help you feel like you've talked to the right people. And that could be personal safety planning. That could be simply raising it for Safe Campus to go investigate something else. But that's a critical group of people for us here at the university in terms of helping individuals and also understanding what's happening in groups and what's happening on campus overall in order for us to be prepared to be most effective in helping individuals and being responsive.
Thank you for putting out that plug, because I know as I'm writing down, night walk, alerts, safe campus, and really I think, for our listeners, taking away these key terms and making that list. And again, I know I said this in our prep meeting, but really grateful for having this podcast opportunity, because I know, our families and excuse me, students get, their parent and family guide and the Husky guide, and, new students are going through modules and we have the orientation. So it's these kind of sound bites or, bullet points of information, but to get to talk with you today and kind of put it all together and sort of that context and that big picture. And as I'm rambling too, I'm looking at our time and knowing that how hot it is. And I know that we could have this conversation and just continue on and on, but wanting to make sure, as I read off these words, what are your top tips that you want to leave with parents and families and students, who are listening?
Yeah. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't go back to the top tip of please do sign up for UW alerts on your texts on your phone. Because right now students are automatically loaded up with their email addresses, but most students don't. Most of you aren't getting your emails popping up on your lock screen. You will get a text that pops up on your lock screen. And again, when we send a UW alert, it's because we need you to know about something and we need you to possibly take an action as a result. That's probably our biggest pitch this fall. We will ultimately, just for context, we will ultimately be switching to having the cell phone numbers that are part of your registration uploaded automatically. We're just not there yet. We're hoping that we can get to that winter quarter, and then it would be more of an opt-out system if people didn't want it. But right now, we are still trying to push hard. Get in there, opt in, please. The other part of it is to know these resources, to really just think about, and these podcast discussions are sometimes hard because we're talking about violence prevention and we're talking about personal preparedness and we're talking about walking around after dark. I am excited for everybody who is starting their college journey. Like, you are going to have amazing experiences. You have tremendous, incredible opportunities. And I think we just want you to know you have a whole system of people that are here to ensure that is done in the safest environment possible, that you have resources to call on if you are feeling at all like you have questions or you're feeling unsafe or you need a response, you need a crisis response. That crew is here. We are doing the best we can to train ourselves and be up on what's happening in the world so that we can respond effectively. I won't say we will get it right all the time. We're learning as we go. This whole endeavor, we're on your educational journey as well. And I think the other thing I would say is, don't feel like you're doing it on your own. You've got people all around you, and that may be connected to what I just said about know the resources, but don't just know the resources. They really are there for you. They really are here and present for you in order to be utilized and to ensure that your journey is awesome.
I love that. Thank you so much, not just for your time today, but for I think some of the clarity that a lot of us have around how you all work together with UW-PD and the U District, and kind of your overall scope on campus and who you work with. And I think it's amazing to know that the programs that we think might just have a few faces at the front of the line, like how deep they really go throughout campus, how supported that unit is. And I know being more recently established, you're probably still looking at like development and more things that you can do as far as resources and programming and stuff. Is there anything that you can share with parents and families and us that's not like super secret that you all might be working on currently? Yeah.
So I'll mention two things that are top of mind for me today. One is, as a part of setting up this new division, we said we committed to an advisory committee so that we would continue to be able to hear the range of voices about what is concerning to people in terms of their own sense of safety or a group's sense of safety. We are in the process of setting that advisory committee up, and there will be student voices on there. We are still figuring out exactly how we're going to figure this out across the Seattle campus, the Bothell campus, the Tacoma campus, and make sure that we can do this in a way where the voices can also hear each other. I sometimes hear different things from students than I will hear from some faculty, and sometimes other faculty will have something to say versus what I heard from staff in a particular area. So the advisory committee is something, I know that sounds geeky and processy, but it's really important for the accountability part of our mission here. We really do want to be transparent and accountable to the broader university community. So one geeky processy thing, but how could I not do that coming out of a public administration program? The second thing might be a little more challenging for some folks. Everyone, I think, is aware of the opioid epidemic across the United States. Fentanyl, particularly on the West Coast, is a surging epidemic for folks. It's certainly a crossing factor with some of our more traumatized folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness out in the greater Seattle area, the greater Los Angeles area, the greater San Jose area, the greater Portland area. You know, you can run through the cities, and this, I don't mean to just be West Coast for this. This is across the country. There's a lot of interest from students, staff, and faculty in having opioid reversal medication more available in public places on campus. And I'm not saying this as a way to indicate that we have a lot of opioid use among our student, staff, and faculty population. I think people are thinking more about visitors to our campus. And that may or may not be true. We may have some student, staff, and faculty who are struggling with opioids. We don't know the answer to that. So one of the things I'm working on with our Hull Health Student Health Center, with faculty, with other student groups, is the ability to have naloxone, which is the opioid reversal medication most prevalent right now, available in a few public places. It will likely be available in a vending machine on campus this year. And it's already carried by University of Washington Police Department officers who are trained in how to use it. And again, the conversation is where to place it in some high traffic areas of campus in case there's an issue, in case there's someone who experiences an overdose. That one might be a little trickier for some folks, but it is a reality where we want to make sure that we are giving people the best opportunity possible to recover and the best opportunity possible to find the treatment that works for them. How's that for a tough one?
I know. No, and thank you, Zack, for that question too. I know. But I think, yeah, as we're talking about where we are now and future.
I think it's important to know the work that you all do is very relevant to what's actually happening. And if folks visit Seattle, if they visit any urban city right now, these are the things that we need to focus on. So I think they'll find comfort in knowing that that's something y'all have your purview set on. So thank you very much for sharing that.
I always like to ask this, but are there any questions that you were expecting us to ask or that we didn't ask and you'd like to kind of wrap up with?
No, I think we covered, we hit on the alert, which was a real priority for us to try to get as many folks to recognize that we need that, and we need them signing up via text. We talked about night walk, and we probably talked about police a bit more than I don't know. I don't know if that's in balance or not, but we probably talked about police a little bit more than needed, but there you have it.
I think that distinction, though, is important because folks are going to hear campus community safety and wonder, is that UW PD or what are the two? So I think that was perfect because even as a newbie 6 months in on campus, that was good for me to hear. So I appreciate it.
If we were in a city and if I was the mayor, I would have a badge as the chief, as the boss of the police. But we're a university, and that's not written into the code that I get a badge as the boss of the police. It's sad for me, really.
You know what? You may receive something in your box soon. Your UW campus
I was curious. I know I was making faces at you, Zack. Like, how can we make this a reality?
Oh, listen. Yes. No. We got this.
I feel like on that note, that's a good note, I think, what do you think?
Yes, I think that's perfect. Badge coming soon.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time today, Sally. And I'm, again, so grateful that our families and students get to listen to your words of wisdom and stories and recommendations. Yeah, and it really has been a pleasure getting to know you too, and a little bit more about you and your work and your passion. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks. I really appreciate I do, seriously, I do really very much appreciate the opportunity. Uh, this is a new, still, even though we're in our second year as a new division, we're still very much in a learning and resetting and renorming, and we will be for a while. I mean, the reimagining part of this is incredibly important to President Kause. And that's not, I try to explain to people, that's not a one and done. That is ongoing as we listen and as we realize things about ourselves and about how we've made assumptions in the past that for many people were recognized as wrong. But the dominant or majority culture didn't recognize that they were wrong. And that's something that will continue to be a big challenge for institutions like universities for a while to come, a long time to come.
Big paradigm shift in that world for sure. And again, our team, Parent and Family Programs, first year programs team, and of course, Campus Community Safety, Sally Clark, we are all here to support you. We'll drop those resources in our link, and we will see you all, not see you all, we will talk to you all next time. Have a great week. Stay cool, everybody.
The Husky Huddle Up podcast series is a collaboration between the University of Washington's first year programs and parent and family programs to provide parents and families equitable access to information in support of the Husky success. The Husky Huddle Up podcast is produced by me, Chloe Giselle, a recent graduate from the UW who received a Bachelor's of Arts through the Cinema and Media Studies program.